Hello friends, welcome to Edwiki Learning channel. Please do subscribe to get more updates on the DevOps concepts. This video is part of the full course AWS DevOps Practitioner training. Please do check the description below to get the link for the complete full course. Without further delay, let's get into the video. Thank you.
Welcome back team, and we will continue our discussion, right? But if you slowly observe the things the way how it is, right, we are just doing some improvements, correct? We already know how to deploy a web server and make my web application live and accessible, right? What is that we are doing since last almost 2 weeks of timeline? We are keep on doing some improvements, right? So when I say improvements, it could be high availability, it could be a load balancing, it could be scalability, or it could be how quickly we can deploy our whole infrastructure and application and make it running a web application, right? That is also a kind of improvements, right? You see now with the help of the Terraform, how easy it is, guys, to deploy the infrastructure. Let's say today I'll ask you, hey, can you go and create one VPC and deploy one EC2 instance? How much time that it takes for you to deploy the whole entire VPC project and the one EC2 server? How much time that it takes for us? So the code is already there, right? Because writing the Terraform code is like one-time job, right? Almost. So the code is already there. You just need to go and modify the values however you wanted to. Just change the values and just run the Terraform commands. That takes care of. So we are we are we are improving how quickly, right, we can deliver the application. And as of now, we are focusing on the infrastructure delivery, correct? So how quickly we can deploy our infrastructure resources on AWS cloud with the help of the Terraform code. That's it. Well, let's see. Let me continue this scope, and I wanted to deploy the EC2 instance today, correct? So I think a quick recap here. Uh, we have written a simple EC2 instance code, and that is where if I go to ec2.tf, there are two important things that we talked about, right? One, if you wanted to refer the existing AWS resource that was already there, then you need to use the data resource. If the existing resource is actually created by any other Terraform project, then we can import that resource values by using the data resource by pointing to that remote state file. This is what it is, right? If the existing resource is not created by the Terraform, maybe like a AMIID, which is not done by a Terraform, right? So we can use the data resource and we can get that values using the specific data resource type, right? So that is how we can make the things dynamically pull the existing values from existing source. Rather, you are referencing those in a hard-coded manner, right? So that's what the things, and we can apply this data resource for your instance types, your key pair, whatnot. Anything that is already there, we can just use the data resource. Okay. So for now, this is the simple EC2 instance, right? I just said that the instance has to be deployed it into a which subnet as well, right? And this is how the syntax will be, guys. The data dot the block type dot the block name dot. So this is how the syntax will be. Outputs dot. Why? Whenever you have exported a variable by using the output block in your VPC project, in this case, I'm actually getting the subnet ID, right? The subnet is actually deployed by the VPC project. If you look into the VPC project, in the VPC project output.tf, you see that, right? This is the output variable that is exported, right? So if you wanted to use this value in your EC2 project, so the syntax will go like this. We need to specify outputs dot, then specify the output variable, then it will get the value from that state file and it will replace this whole syntax with that value, and that's how I'm giving the subnet ID in a dynamic fashion rather putting a hard-coded value over there, right? The only advantage is tomorrow for any reason, if your VPC project is got modified, you don't need to worry about right, changing your subnet ID manually. Your code will take care of dynamically pulling it from the specific state file. Good. That's a quick recap. Now, maybe I wanted to deploy my ACT instance, adding some security groups as well. Okay. So let me go ahead and create a security group as well, guys. What I do is I'll just go with sg.df. I wanted to create my own security group. As usual, the process, get into the documentation, correct? Hey, uh, I wanted to use the Terraform to create a AWS security group, right? So get into the documentation. I need a resource block, right, in order to create a resource, correct? Right, so get into this and just go to the documentation and get these different attribute references and just start composing the things. Okay, so by now we already familiar, right, the approach, correct? What is the approach that we need to go with any resource? As of now I have shown you EC2, maybe VPC, some VPC components, right? Now I'm showing you the security group. Like that, any AWS resource, if I ask you, can you build a Terraform code, guys, by following the process? Yes, right? I don't need to show for each and every resource. Just matter of going to the documentation and getting the argument and fill up the values for there. If you are already familiar about the AWS side, it's very easy to write a Terraform code. Agree with me, right? So, but let me show you the security group now. Okay. So since we already familiar about this argument reference process, how to get these parameters to make this bit faster, what I do is I'll go and get one sample. Okay, so already there are some sample code, right? So I'll just get the sample. Okay, so here I can see the sample, right? So this is where I can create a security group and create a security group inbound rules. I just wanted to make it a little easier. There are different ways to go about it. I just wanted to use the easiest method. Let me pull some sample syntaxes, guys, because this is all very standard syntaxes, right? So let me see if I have the code already for creating a security group. Yeah, so here I can see some example syntax already. So I'm just getting this. Copy. I can copy it from their documentation also, not a problem. So we just need to spend some time here to understand this documentation, examples, and copy paste, right? So that's the reason. So let me come to here. Let me paste this. I can ask my chat GPT as well if I want to. Okay. And now let me see some changes. Resource, and the resource type is AWS security group, and I can give the name for this. Let's say this is the web server security group. Any name that you like it is fine. Okay. Now I wanted to give the name of the security group here. Okay. So let me give the name here, right? So I wanted to make this as a variabilize, guys. So let's say var dot sg underscore name. Okay, I'm just making it as a security group name. Let me take this variable. Let me declare a variable here. Correct? Are we good on this? Let me go to the terraform.tf vars. Let me use this variable. Let me give the name. Let's say this is the a web security group. Any name that you like, it is not a problem, right? Let me go back to the security group.tf file one more time. Now this is the variable name, looks good, and you give some description. And this is the inbound rule, guys. You see, ingress. This is where you are telling that, right? The port number 22 has to be allowed from anywhere, right? And this is also one more ingress rule saying that the port number 80 has to be allowed from anywhere. Remember, if you go to the UI, when you are trying to create a rule in the security group, it will ask you the protocol, the target port number, and the destination, right? So the same thing I'm just filling up in this format. Wherever you see the ingress, that is the inbound rule, and wherever you see the egress, that is the outbound rule, right? Remember, the outbound rule mostly you wanted to allow for all the traffic, guys. That's where the from and to port numbers are 00, because I don't want to restrict for any specific port. It has to be allowed for everyone, right? That's the syntax here, right? So now you see here, this is what I'm trying to focus now. The security group has to be created in a which VPC, correct? So this is where you need to tell the VPC name. So help me, guys. Where is my VPC ID? Do I need to hard code it? No, right? The VPC is actually deployed from the VPC project. That VPC information is already stored in the VPC project specific state file, correct? This is the state file where the VPC resources metadata information is already stored. So I can reference to this particular state file to get a VPC ID, correct? So that's where you can see here. Of course, I have already written a data block here. In the data block, you see this. I have a data block already pointing to the remote S3 bucket to the VPC project specific state file, right? I just need to go to this, right? So in the sg.tf, you need to tell that, hey, get the VPC ID from data block, and terraform underscore remote state is the type, and the S3 backend is the name of my data block. In the output section, this is the variable. If you have any confusions, what could be the variable name that I need to use, you need to go back to the VPC project, look into the output.tf and see what is the output variable that was used to export this variable. Because if this is exported, then only it's possible to use this in your any other dependence projects, and that's what you need to match up this. That's it. Now I'm done with this VPC section, right? Now regarding the variable name, guys, okay, a question for you at this time. Can you create a multiple security groups with the same name? This is not a Terraform question. This is the AWS question, right? So can you create a security groups, multiple security groups with the same name? Okay, I got no and yes, both answers. Now the next question for you. Can you create multiple EC2 instances with the same name? Right? So basically, can I create a multiple resources with the same name or not is something related to AWS constraint, right? That is not a Terraform constraint. Sometimes the AWS will allow to create multiple multiple resources with the same name. Sometimes AWS will not allow to create multiple resources with the same name, correct? It's all case to case basis. To be specific, if this is a easy to instance, yes, I can create multiple servers with the same name, no problem. But when it comes to the security group, when you're trying to create multiple security groups with the same name, it won't allow. It says that, hey, your security group name should be a unique. Got me? So in that situation, right, sometimes your security group name has to be, dynamically changing as well, or it should be more realistic as well. Okay. So I'm not going in more deeper and deeper how to make your security group names to be a unique queue, but yeah, those things we need to keep in mind. Sometimes you will be running the Terraform apply command. It will complain that, hey, the name is already exist. Most of the times we will be thinking from the Terraform perspective, why my Terraform is failing. Getting me? But the Terraform is not failing because of the Terraform code issues. Why it is failing? It's because of the AWS issue, guys. That's what I'm trying to highlight it one more time. Because as a beginner, we always look at the Terraform code only. What is went wrong? No, it is just transforming your requirements to the AWS. It's up to the AWS whether to accept it or not. Correct? So we should have more strong knowledge on the platform side as well to make these things working. Okay. So sometimes whenever you wanted to give any value, right, you don't want to give the whole value in the variable itself. You wanted to do some concatenation. In the sense, let's say I wanted to do like this. Sorry. I'll show you what does it mean. So let me go back to the terraform.tfs, and here I'm just giving the name. Okay, I'll show you what does it mean. The name is web. Okay, so what I'm doing, right, rather me using the the security group name as a variable, I'm just taking the variable called name here, and you will know the advantage now. I'll go to the sd.tf and I'll just use the name variable here. Okay, and I'll go to terraform.tf files. I don't want to go with the security group name, rather I'll just go with the name, right? So my variable name is name, and I given the value to my name variable as web. But if you get into the security group configuration, right, you see this concatenation. Now tell me guys, what will be the name of my security group in this case? My security group name will be web hyphen sg. That will be the name of my security group. Getting me? So what I'm doing is hey, get the value for the variable called name. So this whole syntax will be get replaced with your name variable value, which is web, and hyphen sg will be get added to that, right? So that way the whole security group name will become web hyphen sg. This is called as a concatenation concept. That means you are actually combining, right, your variable value with your any other external or any other characteristics that you wanted to. So if you are actually doing this kind of a concatenation, you need to ensure that you are putting that into the quote mark, and your variable should be in a interpolation syntax. The syntax that you see here, this is called as a interpolation syntax. So usually so far, right, wherever I wanted to use the variable, what I did, I actually did like this, right? For example, if I want to specify the value here, I just do var dot variable name, correct? But whenever I wanted to do the concatenation, you can just mention that variable declarations assignments in the interpolation syntax, which is dollar and then the curly brace, and specify your var dot variable name and close the curly brace and hyphen and just put it in the quote mark. What's the advantage with this, guys? The advantage is I'm going to minimize the overall number of variables, right? Let's say now I'm trying to put some taggings as well. Maybe in the ec2.tf file, right? I'm going to put some tags just to explain what it is, right? So here, let's say I wanted to use the name of my name tag. What I can do now, I can just go with the var.name. Getting my point, guys? So that I don't need to have a one more variable for tag name, a one variable for security group name, one variable for my other resources, correct? So wherever you wanted to use the name, just take it as a one variable and one value, correct, like this. Now, if you wanted to append something, we can take care of in your code level itself. Maybe in a security group level, I'll add hyphen sg. Maybe in the EC2 light, here also I can do some concatenation. For example, like this, if you want to. Hyphen, let's say tag, whatever you wanted to, right? So that the name will be the common everywhere, and we are just adding some extra wherever you wanted to based on the context. Are we good with this? Right? Usually when you are deploying the EC2 server for as a web server, right? In all the places I wanted to use the web server terminology or web terminology. Then based on the situation, you need to add some content. So I'm basically minimizing the number of total variables case, rather using a tag name is one variable, security group name is one variable, right? Like that. Are we good with this? Now, so let me specify the security group name as well here, because I wanted to tell that this EC2 instance should be get deployed using which security group, right? Now, let me specify that, right? The security underscore groups is the argument name. Usually, right, if you don't know as well, the Visual Studio Code will automatically give you the suggestions, or else we just need to get into their documentation. Where is the documentation? I need to get into, sorry, Terraform EC2 instance, right? I wanted to create a EC2 instance. Now I wanted to specify that the instance to be get deployed it into which is security group. Now you see that uh, this is the argument name, security underscore group. Now we need to give the value for that. Now tell me guys, in general, what could be the value here? Do you need to give one security group, or will it allow the multiple security groups? Can you give multiple security groups to the single EC2 server? Is it possible? It's possible, right? AWS will allow you to have multiple security groups, right? So that's where it is. If your argument is expecting only one, then that will be a string. If your argument is expecting multiple, but the value to be a key and the value kind, then that is called as a map of string, correct? That is the terminology. Map of string is the terminology that I have used for my tags. But now I wanted to give the security group ID here, and that security group ID will be a multiple possible, right? So that is called as a list of strings. That's the terminology. Even if you get into the documentation here, you see that, right, the value should be list of security group names that you want it to be associated, right? So what is it mean by a list of? Whenever it is saying a list of, then your value should be within this brackets. Now you open the brackets. Now within the brackets, now you tell your security group IDs, right? So what is my security group name, guys? So this is where I have created a security group, right? So it should be AWS security group dot web hyphen underscore sg dot then your security group name, correct? Let me see that, right? So AWS underscore security group dot web underscore sg dot the name. So that is the name of the security group that I wanted to give. If you wanted to give one more, you need to give comma, then give another security group if you wanted to, or else remove the comma, make it one only. Since it is accepting multiple security groups, so your value always should be within the brackets. That's where it is considered that this is the list of strings. Are we good with this? So far we have used three type of data types, guys. Can I call them as a data types? Yes, right? Any data that you are giving as an input to your code, that data to be in a specific format, which is called as a data format, right? Or the data type in a way. One data type is string. One data type is map of string, which is called as a map. The another data type is the list, which is the list of multiple strings or multiple values that you wanted to give. That's how you need to compose the syntax and save the code. Now my code is ready. Let me go ahead and start deploying this. I'll just open the terminal, right? So I will ensure that I'm in the right folder where my code is written. So let me go to EC2 folder. Now let me run Terraform init command to initialize the project. So as a good developer, we should always think how can we minimize the total number of lines of the code. That's the main focus, guys. Okay. There are two rules. The one, how to minimize the total number of lines. The second rule is how to avoid the hard-coded values. You should never ever hard-code any value. Always try to get a dynamic value, or you at least make it as a variabilized value, but don't give the value directly in the code itself. Those are the major, sorry, basic fundamentals that you need to follow as a good developer. Okay. So now let me do a Terraform apply command to apply this particular EC2 project. Right, it is trying to create two resources for you. One resource is actually a security group, and you see this name, guys. The security group name is web-sg. Actually, that's how I have written the code. Now it is actually creating the EC2 instance as well, which is a web-tag is my tag name. I just followed that, right? That's the advantage using the concatenation concept in Terraform. Now, if you say yes, it will go and start deploying. It is already rendered the VPCAD as well for you automatically based on the data resource that I have taken off. Okay, so I just hit enter. It will proceed and deploy the resources for you. In the same fashion, we can start writing the Terraform code for any resource that you like it based on the requirement, guys. So with this information, whatever you have so far, try to do some practicing on Terraform and try to prepare and deploy some resources, and you always get some examples from my Bitbucket as well. I think let me open it again. Right, just get some references there. I'll be giving few more. I think I already given one assignment last week. I'll be giving few more assignments links as well for you to do the practice. Just get into that and start deploying all those things in a better fashion. Right, good. My screen is got stuck actually. My terminal got stuck. That is fine. It will go and deploy the resources for you, right? Good. Now let me ask you one simple question, guys. Right? Let's say the Terraform has deployed my EC2 server. Okay. For some reason, I wanted to stop this EC2 server. What I'm trying to? I want to stop the EC2 server. Right? How will you stop the EC2 server? I don't want to use a AWS management console, right? If it is AWS Management Console, it's very easy. You go to logging into the AWS Management Console, you go to the EC2, right? You go to the running instances there, select the server, right? Correct. So just come here, then you select the server, right? Then you select the instance state, then you stop the server. This is the process, right? What is that we are targeting now, guys? We should never use any manual steps on the UI. Everything should be scripted based or automation, right? So a question for you now, can I do stopping the EC2 server using Terraform code? Or if it is possible also, so is it best practice to use the Terraform to stop the server? No, right? So the Terraform is used for infrastructure deployments only. That means you create a new resources, you destroy the resources, you modify the resources attributes in a way. When I say modify, it's not about a stop, guys. When I say modify, let's say today you deployed the EC2 instance with right a specific tags, you modify it. You deploy the EC2 instance with one security group. You modify this with one more security group, right? You deploy the EC2 server, but later on you wanted to add a IAM role. You go and modify the code and attach the IAM role. Those are the modifications that I'm talking about, right? Which is like basically the configuration that we are going to modify, but not the state of your resource itself, like instance state, stop, restart, terminate, whatever. Sorry, stop, restart, right? So those will become the maintenance activities in a way, right? The AWS administrative activities in a way, correct? So those administrative activities will be done easily with the help of the Python scripting, not a Terraform scripting. Are we good with this statement? So I don't know why this screen got stuck here. Let me kill this session. I'll kill this session. I'll close this terminal. I will open the terminal again. Okay. So now let me run the EC2 Terraform apply. Okay. So what I'm trying to write, so if you have any AWS administrative activities, then we will be heavily depending on the Python scripting, guys. And one example here, when you say what is it mean by the administrative activities, like I wanted to stop the server, like that I wanted to restart the server, right? And I wanted to stop the server at a specific 5 p.m. at every Friday. Got me the requirement. I wanted to start the server at Monday at 9 a.m. Every week. I wanted to restart the server maybe once in a day. These are the administrative activities that we need to do. These will be done with a Python scripting, right? Let me give yes. I'm just giving some brainstorming ideas here, guys. What and all the what does it mean by the administrative activities? Okay, so let's say a organization is setting a rule saying that every EC2 instance which is getting deployed must be having a tag, must be having a name tag. Let's say that is the rule that every organization has, right? Let's say you are actually deploying the EC2 server without putting a tags as an example, right? So who will monitor that, right? So someone should be there to monitor that this instance is deployed without a tag. Okay, this is not allowed. Let me shut down the server. Let me terminate the server. Let me inform to the business owner that hey, there are some servers deployed without a tag. This is not recommended. Please add a tag. Someone has to scan it. Someone has to report it and send a email. Got me? These are the administrative activities, right? Let's say the the organization is having a rule that right no one should allow the port number 22 to the public. You see here, as of now I'm allowing the port number 22 to public, right? Let's say organization is having a security rule. No one should be deploying the security group, right, allowing the port number 22 to public. But how can I control that? How I can enforce it, correct? When I'm having a team of 5 people, maybe anyone can go and create a security group by allowing the port number 22 to public, who will go and watch it out and report it, correct? So that is the administrative activity. I want someone to scan all my security groups. If any security group is having the inbound rule allowing for public, no, I need to take action. Maybe it will delete a rule, or it will inform to the business lead, right? Or it will delete a security group, or it will detach the security group temporarily from your EC2 server. The action is yours, depends on the requirement, but someone should go and scan it and take the necessary action based on the need, right? Who will do that? We can't do that administrative activities as a manual thing, right? Every day go and scan all the resources. No, that is where I need a help of Python, right? Hey Python, can you go and scan all of my resources, all of my security groups, and tell me the report if any security groups are having the inbound rule allowing to public? Hey Python, can you go and scan all of my EC2 instances and tell me is there any server without having a tagging? Hey Python, can you go and look into sorry, can you go and filter my instances and reboot the instances every day once? Getting me? So these are the some use cases that I'm calling it out just to understand why do we need to learn Python? What reason we need to go into the Python, right? So there are various other use cases also there. We'll be slowly learning all of them as well. But to get started with, these are the simple administrative activities that we usually get in or get implemented using a Python code, right? So whatever I talked about here, right, will be done using Python, can be done using a shell scripting, can be done using the Ansible, can be done using any other programming languages like Java, like any other guys. Possible. I'm not saying that Python is the only way, no, right? So there are various other options also there, but out of all those, Python has got a more uh, weightage in terms of how easy it is to write a code, in terms of how easy it is to deploy and manage it and integrate with any other dependency tools, various other advantages, right? So Python is the most uh, more has a more weightage in order to choose for this type of administrative activities compared to any other, right? Let's say if I'm using the bash shell scripting, maybe I need to write some 20 lines of code to get the things done. Maybe the same requirement I can use Python, it can be done within 5 lines. Got me what I'm trying to? That's how some advantages are there with Python, right? And it's very convenient than any other for this type of administrative activities, right? So that's how it is, and we need to get into Python basics now. But why this is failing in the Terraform side, right? So this is fine. It is actually complaining that the the subnet ID that we have provided is having some issue. That's fine for now. I'm not getting into the troubleshooting for now, guys. So we'll look into that. So let me look into the Python side of world now. Okay. How many of you getting scary to learn Python or thinking that, hey, Python is a programming language? Do we need to really learn the Python? How easy or difficult to learn the Python? Maybe we can't learn the Python. Maybe we need to have some other alternatives. How many of you scary at this time? Not really. Okay, then it's good sign. You are all ready to learn coding as well. As I see a question in the chat window, right? Just to reiterate my statement, right? You will never ever use the AWS console UI, right, in order to do any of the administrative activities related to AWS. You always do via the scripting. It could be a Python, it could be a Terraform. Terraform is for infrastructure deployment and managing, and Python is for the infrastructure administrative activities. And I have given you clear differences between infrastructure deployment and the administrative activities, some of the examples, right? Now, if you look into the Python, right, so let me come to Python. I think to get into the Python world, right, the very first thing that I wanted to talk about is the difference between scripting and the programming. Because sometimes the people will call scripting language, sometimes the people will call it as a programming language, right? Okay, so when it comes to the coding side, right, there are some compiling specific languages which are also called as a programming languages. So basically, you write a code. You all know, right? What does it mean by the code? Code is some series of statements, right? So you write a code, and once you have written the code has to be get compiled. When I say compile, we can also use the terminology called build as well, right? So when you do the compilation or when you do the build of your code, whatever you have written in your file, your entire code will now be get converted it into a machine understandable language like a binary format, guys. Okay, so usually you will be writing the code in a English format, right? So you use the English statements and you make some syntaxes and you write a code, and that will be get converted it into the binary mode once you do the compilation or the build process, right? And once this is converted into the binary format, then you actually execute this binary formatted file to run the code and get a output. That means, so whenever you have used the programming languages like Java, right? Java is one of the example of programming language. So if you have written the code using Java, then that Java code has to be get compiled, or the Java code has to be get built. Then that Java code which you have written in an English format will be get converted it into the binary formatted file, which is called as a artifact file from the technical language perspective. Sometimes we can call it as a class file. Sometimes we can call it as a library file. Got me, guys? These are the different terminologies that the people will use based on the context, based on the programming languages, right? So sometimes if it is a Java program, then the people will call it as a library. If this is a C program, then the people will call it as a a compiled compilation, right? So sometimes we can call it as a class file. Even the Java also has a class file concept, right? Whatever the terminology that the people use, right, at the end of the day understands that your programming language will be going for the build process and will be creating a machine understandable language, machine understandable format artifact. Then you execute that uh, file, the class file or library file, then that will give you the output for you. That is called as a programming language, and the examples are Java, C, C++, right, and Ruby, whatever. So there are plenty different programming languages that are available in the market, right? So at high level, Java is the main which we mostly using, right, in our technologies. Well, so the other end there is a scripting language, right? So when you look into the scripting languages like a Python, right? You write a code, whatever the requirement that you have, with some series of instructions by following the program specific syntaxes. Then you actually run the code directly. You see here the Python code that you have written. This code you are actually executing directly. You see the run command here. Whenever you run the code, at single run, your code will be get interpreted it into the machine understandable format, plus it is being executed, plus it is giving you the output. Everything is going in one single statement, guys. Getting me? So if you are writing the code using the programming languages like a Java, then there are two steps that you need to follow to get output. The step one, you need to do the build. Step two, you need to run that build file. Getting me? If this is a scripting language, then it's a one-step approach. First, you write a code, you just run the code. That's it. It takes care of interpretation. Interpretation is the terminology that we use. The interpretation in the sense, right? The code will be get converted it into the machine understandable format or whatever the format that it needs, right? That is called as interpretation. Then the interpreted output file will be get executed as well. Both will go in one single liner and you get an output as well. Maybe let me do a simple change here, guys. I wanted to use the terminology called interpret languages, because I'm not going to use a term called compile here, right? The compile languages are all programming languages where you do the compile first, then you run the code. The interpret languages in the sense, right, you write a code, just run the code, it will just give you the output for you. Backend, it takes care of interpretation and executing everything for you. So in the scripting languages, Python is one of the famous one, and the Linux bash shell scripting also coming it into the scripting languages. Good with this? Now, whatever you can achieve using Python, right? The same thing can be achievable using Java. That means whatever you are doing using this scripting languages can be done from your programming languages as well. But right, each has its own pros and cons, right? For which context that you are trying to use, right? So always, if you are doing any administrative activities, it's better to use the scripting languages like a Python to administrate your activities. Or I have already told you some of the administrative examples, right? Let's say stop the server, restart the server, so on, so on, right? But this is not administrative activity, but you wanted to develop a product. I wanted to build a website. I wanted to develop a application that where my users wanted to access it. You got me what I'm trying to? If that kind of the product that you wanted to develop, you want to develop the software, then it's better to go with programming languages, guys. But if you ask me, can Java do all of the uh, tasks what the Python will do? Yes, definitely it will be done, right? We need to take a call which one is more convenient for us to quickly get the task is done. That's where we need to take a call. But all the administrative activities go with Python. Any software development activities you go with the programming languages like a Java, guys. Are we good with this? Now, if you ask me, can I use Python for developing the software as well? Like I wanted to use Python to develop a website, to develop a application, to develop a website, sorry, a web application or a software. Yes, definitely yes. So the Python, right, is working in two different ways. Python can work as a scripting language. The Python can work as a real software programming side as well to develop the web applications as well, guys. So it's as a developer, it's your requirement, it's your call what to pick up at which scenario. Sometimes the people will prefer Python to do the web development as well. Sometimes the people will pick Java as a web development, right? So why? Based on the requirement, what kind of the functionality that you are incorporating in your website, the developers will compare the pros and cons in both languages, then they take a call, guys. Are we good with this? That means the Python is not just a scripting language to do the administrative activities. The Python will also works as a software development product, sorry, programming languages side as well, in order to develop the applications and the UI as well. Even the web UI, whatever you see, right? All these things can easily develop using Python as well. But a question for you at this time, what is that you wanted to learn in Python, guys? You wanted to learn Python as a administrative, sorry, you wanted to learn Python as a automation engineer, or you wanted to learn Python as a web developer role? What I'm trying to, right? Because the Python is supporting for everything. It supports for automation, it supports for web development as well. The web developers will be learning the Python towards the development scope. The the engineers like a DevOps engineer, a cloud engineers, the site reliability engineers, right? These folks will be learning the Python towards the automation scope. Both are two different guys. There are some common basics there and there matching, right? But once you go to the advanced level, right, the things will completely changing from the web development role to the automation role, though both are using the Python only. Good with that? So definitely you need a automation side of Python skills, as your job role is matching to that. You don't need to learn the Python as a web development side of world, guys, as a developer role. You don't need to. You don't need to know all those how it is happening in that side. So I'll be focusing all uh, Python basics and how it is being used as a automation product or automation code to administrate your activities, guys. I'm not going to touch base with the web development side, how to develop the websites and all, because that is not our job role. I don't want to make you guys scary by jumping onto the Python immediately and start writing the code. You got me what I'm trying to? That's where I'm spending some time to get some familiarity about these programming languages, right? And slowly we will get into there and we'll definitely see how to write a code, not a worry. Are we good on this? I don't have a beautiful slide at this time, right? But I wanted to talk about one simple thing. I think I have to create one beautiful slide for this as well, but for now, we'll go with this. Okay. So let's say whenever you are writing any code, right? You know that the code is just a sequence of lines, correct? So I'll write a line one, I'll write line two, line three, line four, line five. So let's say I'm writing some code, okay? Line one, line two, all these things. This code will do some activity, whatever, right? So let's say this code is written in Python as an example. Don't worry about these use cases. Let's say I have written a Python code and this code has total 5 lines in it. Whenever you execute this Python code, right, it will be executed in a sequential fashion, guys. That means it will execute line one first, then it will go to line two, then it will go to line three, then line four, then line five. That is what the Python scripting will be get executed. Or not only Python, any scripting language that you take, maybe a bash shell, maybe a Python scripting, right? The the execution process will be a procedure oriented. That means it will go line by line execution. Let's say at line number two there is a problem, right? There is an issue with line number two. Maybe you have not written the code properly. What will happen? Your script will be get exited without proceeding with the line number three and four and five. That is the behavior of your scripting language execution process, guys. Correct? But if you have written the code in a Java as an example, right? Right? If you have written the code in a Java, right? And let's say there are 5 lines of code written in Java, the execution process will not be a sequential. It may be possible that it will execute line number 5 first, then it will execute line number 1, then it will execute line number 3, then it may go to line number 2, then it may go to line number 4 as well. Possible. I'm just randomly telling the answers here. Possible. That's the basic differences between the scripting language execution process and the programming languages execution process. Are we good with this? It's important to know these differences, the way of executions as well, right? If it is Java, let's say, first it is executing line number 5. Let's say for some reason the line number 5 is having some issue. Maybe code is not executing properly. It still can go to a next step and can start executing other lines as well, possible. But if it is a Python, right? Let's say the code is got stuck up in one liner, then it will not proceed with the further lines just like that, guys. So when it comes to the scripting kind of mode, that's how the differences come between these two. Anyway, we are not worrying about how the Java works and all these things, but I'm trying to give you some insight the differences between programming and the scripting languages and how it works. But definitely regarding the Python, because we are working on the Python to do the code development, we should understand that, right? This is the sequence-based execution process, and if one line gets any mistake, it will not proceed with the further lines. The code will be get exited there itself. That's how the Python behavior, guys. Good. Are we ready now to get into the Python and start writing the code? Not really. So when you're writing any code, right, obviously you will not be using the notepad file and start writing the code from the notepad file, right? You know the reason, right? Any notepad file editors will not give you any suggestions. It will not tell you any color coding. You will not get any warnings. It's very difficult to write a code like a plain text editors, right? So that is the reason we definitely use the editors like a Visual Studio Code in order to start writing any programming languages. At least to our specific job role purpose, Visual Studio Code is the best one compared to any other code editors. Okay, so now in order to get started with writing the Python code, what I do is I'll just try to create one folder in which folder I wanted to keep my Python code, like same process. I created one Terraform folder where I wanted to keep my Terraform code, right? Now I'm just creating one folder for keeping my Python code, right? Now I'll just open that folder, then I'll start writing the code over there. I'm just opening that folder in my Visual Studio Code so that I can start creating a files in this folder and start putting the code over there, correct? So when you're writing any file, right, to keep your Python code, let's say the name of the file can be anything, right? It can be anything. I'm just using main. This is just a best practice where the people will use, but the name could be anything, but the file should have the extension called py. That's the extension, guys. Like how you guys are using .tf as the extension to identify that the file is actually holding the Terraform code. Same way, .py is the extension to tell that this is actually containing the Python code, and you see that the Visual Studio Code automatically understands that this is the Python code, the corresponding symbol is came here. For any reason, if your symbol is not appeared or if it is not following the color coding for any reason, you always know the reason, right? Go to the extensions, right? Search for the Python, right? Get the Python extension and install that extension. Then your Visual Studio Code will understand that scripting syntaxes, and it will help you on the development side. Remember, guys, when you install the extension in the Visual Studio Code, is not mean that this software is installed in your local. Getting me? This is just for Visual Studio Code purpose to understand the syntaxes and give you some recommendations, right? Well, I'll go back here. And again, right, we should not jump on to writing the code, right, immediately. Always a better idea to create one README file, correct? What is that you wanted to achieve in a Python code? Maybe without a use case, right? We can't go and simply write a code, right? We need to have a use case, right? So let me see the use case first, then we'll try to write a code for that case. So here the use case that I'm trying to bring up is stop EC2 instances. This is my requirement, guys. Okay, use case in the sense you should know what is that you are expecting the Python code should do, right? That's the use case. My requirement is I wanted to stop a EC2 server using Python code, right? So whenever you wanted to get started with writing the Python code, I always recommend to follow a 3-step approach. You write a Python code by following 3 steps, right? So the step number 3 is all about writing the business logic, which is like output. What is the output that you are looking for, right? So to get that output, so we need to perform a business logic, correct? How many you can understand what does it mean by the business logic? Let's say here I wanted to stop a server, right? To stop the server, to stop the EC2 server, what exactly needs to be done? That is called as a business logic. So you write a business logic for that. To execute the business logic, to get an output, right? You have to give some input, right? Correct. So you identify the input that you wanted to give to your code. Let's say in this scenario, my requirement is I wanted to stop a EC2 server, correct? If you are expecting the Python code to go and stop the server in your AWS cloud, you need to tell to your Python code, right? Hey, Python code, this is my EC2 server ID. Can you please stop it, correct? That's how you need to ask the Python code, correct? That's how you need to give the input to the Python code. Agree with me? I'm not really going into the technical coding style, guys. This is a plain text English formatted planning that I'm trying to make it out, right? So you need to give some input to the Python code. Hey, this is my EC2 server ID. Maybe you need to give the instance ID as input. So you give the instance ID as an input to the Python code, then the Python code will take this instance ID as input, then it will perform the business logic, whatever needs to be done, then it will give you the output. Your output is stop the server. Are we good with this? When I say input, can I say this is a data input, guys? Yes, right? So I'm trying to give some data as an input to my Python code. Then the Python code will take this input and it will do some business logic. It will execute some code. Then finally, it will give you the output for you. So this is the input section. Then this is the output section where the business logic is being executed. Now, whenever you are whenever you are giving the data as an input, sometimes the data can be given in a different types, correct? So which is called as a data types. Even if you look back to your Terraform, guys, same approach, right? The three-step approach. You give some input to the Terraform. The Terraform will take the input, it will execute the business logic, and it will give you the output for you, correct? What is the input that you have given to a Terraform, guys? You give the input like, hey, I need a EC2 server with this AMI ID, this security group, this VPC, right? This is called as input, right? All the input that we are actually passing, right, by following the data type, right? Sometimes you give the input as a integer number, sometimes you give the input as a string, sometimes you give the input as a floating number. Getting me what I'm trying to? Sometimes you give the input as a map of strings, sometimes you give the input as a list of strings. So in which format you are actually giving the data input to the Python code is really important. Are you giving the value in a integer format, which is in the number format, or it is in the list of multiple values? Is it a map of multiple values? Is it a floating number or a string number? I hope you are all know about all these different data types at least by now, because we already seen what is it mean by the list of and the map of and the strings in the Terraform itself, right? So that means I will be giving the instance ID as an input to my Python code, and I will follow definitely any one of the data type whichever is suitable for this use case, and I'll give to a Python code. The Python will take your input and it will use that input in your business logic and it will be executed. Sometimes what will happen, right? To execute the business logic, the Python says that, hey, please give me the input for me in a string format. Let's say Python says that I need an input in a string format. Then only I can take the input and I can execute the business logic and give you the output. But what will happen, right? You may be giving the input in the list format, correct? Sometimes you give the input in the list format, your business logic is expecting that the input to be in a string format. That is where the mismatch is happening. You'll get to know that in a real-time scenario once I get into the coding side, but possible, right? You are giving the data in a list format. Your Python says that no, I don't need the data to be in a list format. I need only one value. The list is having multiple, right? No, I don't need this multiple values. I need only one value. Please give me in a string format. So in that situation, the input is in different format. The Python is expecting the input to be in a different format. That is where you need to have the data transformation technique. That means, so whenever you are getting the input in a different format, but you are expecting it in a different format by your Python, then you need to write some more extra lines of code to do the data transformation. That means if you get an input in the list format, please convert that list formatted data it into the string format, which is expected by your Python code, then give it to the business logic accordingly. So maybe in the data transformation, what I do is if I get the input as list I'll convert this it into a string, then give this string value to the business logic, then it will take that input and it will proceed for executing the logic and it will give you the output for you. Are we good with this high level thing? That means tomorrow you write a Python code for any use case. It could be a stopping the server, it could be a scanning the security group, it could be any other. My always take on is break down your entire program it into three pieces, right? Then see the third step is the first thing, right? So what is that your business logic is expecting the input to be? Then see the actual input that you are receiving is in which format. If the format is not matching, just go and do some data transformation techniques, convert the data it into the required format, then use that in your Python code. That's it. Then you are done with your Python coding. So once I get into the Python programming, right, all what I do is I'll explain, right, how to write a code for business logic, how to write a code to give the input, how to convert the data to the right format using the data transformation techniques. These are the three elements that I'm going to touch base in every use case. My coding style also will be following the same approach. I know most of you thinking that the moment when we get into the Python, it should be print hello world, right? But I'm not getting into the print hello world so far, right? So yeah, I don't want to go with the print hello world kind of uh, generic explanation where the people will still having a question mark why the print hello world will be in every instructor will use to or will get start with this print hello world, right? What is this all about? So I know that question marks always will be there for beginners, so I'm not going to that approach, guys, and so I'm putting some different ways in general, because once we know the general understanding of the requirement in a plain text format or in a flowchart format, it's very easy to convert this no, English formatted statements it into the coding style. It's very easy. You will know definitely how I will be transforming this statement it into the coding sooner, maybe in tomorrow, right? So for now, whenever you write a Python code, right, in order to execute the Python code, you need a Python software, right? So you need to download and install the Python software. Like how I downloaded the Terraform software and I configured the Terraform software in the local. Same way, you need to download and keep the Python software as well, right? All what you need to do is Python download. Python.org is the official web portal where you can get the Python software, which is the open source software. You don't need to pay any license. So here you can see the Python software for Windows, Linux, Mac, or whichever the OS flavor that you are using, right? Just go to that section and download it. And here I am using a Windows system, so I can just go to this download Python and it will just download the .exe file here. Just click on that file and just follow that next. Finally, your Python software will be get installed. Probably the first time when you are installing the Python, you may need to restart your machine as well in order to get this software is up and running. If you're using a Mac or any other, just go to this section to see the steps how to download and install it for your Mac systems. Usually it will be Mac compatible, files only, right? Once the Python is downloaded and installed, you can just open your terminal. It could be the Windows CMD or it could be your general bash shell as well, not a worry. If you already having the bash shell, you can use the bash shell as well. Just run the command called python hyphen version. So it will tell you that which Python is actually installed. Remember one thing, Python is available in two different versions, Python 2 and Python 3. There are two different versions are available. Python 2 is the old version, Python 3 is the latest one, right? So at the time of your downloading the Python, by default you will be getting the latest version only. You can see that the Python 3 version, right? If at all you have downloaded and installed the Python 2 version, right, then uh, your output says that Python 2 point something something. Okay, why I'm spending some time on these versions, right? If at all for any reason you installed Python 2 and Python 3, let's say you installed both versions in the same machine. If you install both versions in the same machine, then by default the Python command will invoke the Python 2 version. If you wanted to invoke the Python 3 version, your command should be Python 3 hyphen hyphen version. I wanted to show you that the difference, guys, right? In my system, I have only one Python software, which is 3 point series. So Python command, Python 3 command, both are invoking the 3 version only. So there is no difference for me. But if at all you installed the Python 2 and Python 3 in the single system, then Python command will go to the 2 version, Python 3 will go to the 3 version, guys. That's the difference. As much as possible, try to use Python 3 only. Python 2 is the old, which is no more in use. Even the people are also started converting into Python 3 only. Going forward, Python 2 will be get deprecated. What is so important is the code that you written for Python 2 may or may not be working for Python 3. So always the version is important. You have written the code for which version, you ensure that you are using the same version only in order to execute the code and make it happen. There will be some differences between version to version, sometimes syntaxes, and it may not work as expected, guys. Any developer, whoever is working on, the very first thing that they need to ensure is the versions, right? Which version that we are using here. Why I'm putting this effort here, right? I see lot of people are actually complaining that my code is not working. Hey, I downloaded the code from Bitbucket, which you given me, and it's not working for me. It may not work because I wrote the code for one version and you may be using a different version. It will not work, guys. So should be very careful about that as well. Good thing. So I think if you are able to install and make the Python up and running in your system, then that is good enough for today, guys. So tomorrow I'm going to write a Python code to make all these 3 steps available in my code to stop a EC2 server. Right, so that's the story for today, guys. As I said, I don't want to jump on to writing the code today itself. So this is just introduction, what is Python all about, and we'll get started with this tomorrow. And believe me, writing the Python code is way simple. Do you think Terraform is easy or difficult? No answer, that's okay, right? So it's difficult. So why it is difficult? We need to follow the documentation, right? How good you are in following their documentation, then you feel it is easy. If you really look into the Terraform code, guys, did I put my efforts there in understanding the logic, implementing the logic, thinking more and more to how to do this? No, right? All what I need to do is spend some time in their documentation, copy and paste and give your values. That is what is the Terraform. But if you don't have the AWS expertise knowledge, then definitely it is very difficult to manage the Terraform code. If you know the AWS very well, then your Terraform is easy. Just matter of copy paste and make the things happen. Well, we'll see the Python as well, how easy or difficult. Start from tomorrow's sessions, guys. Okay. So a general discussion based on the questions that I see in the chat window, right? Why we are preferring the Python is, let's say I have the use case like this. I need to stop the EC2 server using the code. If I write a code for this use case using Java, let's say my program length will be 50 lines. I need to write some 50 lines of code to make this happen. The same thing I can achieve in Python by just writing 5 lines. That's where the difference comes in, right? So the length of the code will go minimized in a Python compared to Java. It's easy to write the code in Python compared to Java, right? The Python is way faster. Sorry, Python is like you know way simpler in terms of the syntaxes. We don't need to too much worry about the commas, semicolons, brackets, and all compared to Java. So that's how some flexibilities are there. That's where the people can prefer Python for these type of administrative activities at least. But if you are developing a very complex software, right? Maybe it's better to use Java only because it has very advanced controllers to handle the complex scenarios. Got me? So based on the use case, maybe in a one single statement, what I can say, if your requirement is very complex, very advanced, very a high-end product, go with Java. If your requirement is very simple, it's very simple use case, administrative activities, a simple website, not a very too much dynamic, then use Python so that it's very easy to write a code. Right, and in a Visual Studio Code, if the Python extension is not there already, you go and install it. If it is there already, you don't do. Mostly these extensions are already available in the Visual Studio Code mostly, but case to case basis, right? In your scenario, if at all you see that the extension is not there, just go and install it, right? Any other questions, do let me know, guys, or else we are good for today.
Sir, suppose if we want to restart our server on Friday night, Friday 8 p.m.
Okay.
Then by this Python scripting, can we do it?
Yes.
At particular time, 8 p.m. to 8 p.m., 9 p.m.
Yes, it will do. Okay. So I need to align my Python code in association with some other schedulers, but yeah, it will be done. So ideally, scheduling can be done with some other job schedulers. Execution will be done with Python. So the Python alone is not doing this whole job, whatever the requirement that you have, but along with the Python, it has to work with some job schedulers as well. So then it will be done. I will talk about those job schedulers as well. How exactly we can make this happen to execute it at 5 p.m. Friday, right? So how to get the things done, we'll see that, right? For now, the answer for you, yes. Python is just for executing the code, right? But someone should be there to come and execute the code on the specific time. That is where we need to use the job schedulers. There are some job schedulers like a cron tab at a Linux level, Lambda at a AWS level, right? Event bridges at a AWS level. There are few other job schedulers are there, or the event triggers are there. You need to take the help of those in order to invoke your Python code whenever you want this to be executed at a high level. but we'll look into that as well.
Sir, I have a doubt regarding before previous assignment. So, can I?
Yes.
Yeah. So, in the assignment, like deploy scalable VPC architecture on AWS Cloud. So, we have used two agents like the CloudWatch agent and also the AWS logs. As we know that both are responsible for collecting the logs and they are publishing it on the CloudWatch at instance level. So I have a doubt like we have installed both like the CloudWatch agent and also AWS logs. So is there any difference between the logs collected by the CloudWatch agent and also AWS logs?
Okay. So the AWS logs is very specific to the logs that you need to ingest into your S3 buckets, or sorry, into your AWS CloudWatch logs, right? The CloudWatch agent is collecting some of the metrics like a memory. Let's say I wanted to collect a memory utilization of a EC2 server. I think by now, if you have done some exploration, right, the AWS CloudWatch will not give you the memory utilization by default. You will get only the processor, some of the networking, some of the volume related metrics, right, are available by default in the CloudWatch when you go to the metrics tab. But the memory utilization will not come by default in your CloudWatch metrics tab. If you are interested to see the memory utilization of your server as well, like how you see a CPU and all, then you need to do a custom configuration, right? You go to your EC2 server and install your agent there, and uh, and then only the memory utilization will be appeared in your metrics tab in the CloudWatch. So that kind of the integration that you do with the agents. But you have a file in your AWS server, EC2 server, where that file has to be uploaded to AWS CloudWatch log section in order to see that log data over there. Then you need to install AWS logs and configure the AWS logs configuration file by specifying which log file that you wanted to send to your AWS logs. Let's
Okay.
say I have a web server that is running in the web server is creating the log in the access underscore log file, right? If I want to publish that log file data to AWS CloudWatch log section, that's where I need to configure the AWS logs configuration file.
Okay. So we are using AWS logs only to push that log onto the CloudWatch, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so it is not collecting any logs by itself, AWS logs. We are using it only for the purpose of pushing.
Correct.
Okay. Sir, like the CloudWatch agent, as you said, we are using it to create our customized metrics. So along with that, is it collecting any logs?
No.
But in AWS, a CloudWatch agent, inside that we have one more file like AWS CloudWatch.logs, right? There also we can see some logs over there. So is that log related to metric which we have configured?
Okay. I think then I need to see the screenshot where you are referring to. But yeah, the AWS logs.conf is the configuration file that will come when you install the AWS logs.
Okay, okay, okay.
And I did not touch base on this AWS logs much, just because
Mhm.
we will not push these log data to AWS CloudWatch logs in real time. We don't use this concept. The reason is the AWS logs feature is not very powerful to use it in the real time. So the people are not really using this concept to push the logs to AWS. Rather, the people are using any other external parties or some other different tool sets, right? Like we are not using AWS logs concept to keep these logs in the AWS logs. because that's not really powerful. So we are not using much, so I did not touch base on that. But I added that as part of the assignment, just you'll get some idea that there is a concept of pushing the logs as well. But in real time, rather using this AWS logs, the people will use the concepts called sumo logic, right? We'll use the concepts called Splunk. We'll use the concepts called Kibana dashboards. So there are a few other, right? So rather using this one, those are really powerful open source platforms to keep the logs in one single location. I'll be talking about those Kibana and all in next DevOps series, right? So that's the reason I did not much focus on this AWS logs.
Okay, okay. And also when I try installing this AWS logs, I'm getting error. I'm not able to. What could be the reason, sir? I've shared you a
That is,
screenshot as well.
yeah,
So
that
just
is
we
fine.
can
So
yeah.
technically, it's all based on the operating system that you are using, right? So the
Mhm.
commands may vary from OS to OS again, right? The commands that may work in Amazon Linux 2 AMI may or may not be working on Amazon Linux 2023 AMI. Okay, so probably if I have used Amazon Linux 2 AMI in the assignment that I have given, it might have been worked there. Maybe it will not work now in the Amazon Linux 2023 AMI, which is the latest AMI, which is released just this year. Okay, so that could be the reason. So if that is the case, then we need to see what is the corresponding command in the latest version, right? So interestingly, ChatGPT will not work for latest year. Let me ask this ChatGPT how to install AWS logs in Amazon Linux 2023. Okay, so you see that it is suggesting you to go with the command called pip3 install AWS logs. Okay, so that could be the change. So it might have been install AWS logs in the Amazon Linux 2 AMI, but when it comes to Amazon Linux 2023 AMI, which is the new AMI released this year, right? So the command is varies. So we need to go with this approach now to install this packages. Getting me what I'm trying to?
Yes,
Now
yeah, I got it.
you'll get some AWS logs.conf configuration file. You modify the file. The rest of the process is same, right? But the
Mhm.
installation is got little differ based on the operating system, right? So it will not be the same in all the OS flavors, right? So that gets differ. Uh, can you give me the same on Amazon Linux 2 AMI? That's okay. It is even giving for a pip command only, but m command will work in Amazon Linux 2 actually, but not in the 2023. So we need to use pip3 install AWS logs. Now, uh, what is pip3? That is where you will get to know in the Python lectures. Okay, so I'll talk about pip3 in the Python. Then only you can understand what this command is doing, why the pip3 command and all. You got me? So maybe that's one reason why I did not touch base with these commands previously, because it has a dependency with Python concepts.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, team, if any questions, do let me know, or else we are good for today. We'll regroup tomorrow. We'll continue our Python lectures. Thank you. Thank you.